Stamscasme.
When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. On the second, are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seems heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God. On the last, so amid of conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done.
Song. I wrote this one too, so I was practicing the one that I sang for you the other day, and God laid this one on my heart, and after the messages this morning I just really feel this is the way I should go. So
Writer, hold up your hand. Now she wants that other song, so before you go home you sing it to her.
okay. I want to thank. I have enjoyed every single preacher that's come here this week, and what a blessing. J.R. Gossett has no idea what a blessing he is to me. I mean, he and I, the first time that he said I would make a great hog caller, he and I clicked. I think that was his kind way of saying I had a big mouth. Last night before I went to bed, my daughter, she's 34 years old, she called and said that she's in a medical conference in Boston, which is far away from her mother, and she's had a heart condition, AFib, for about 5-6 years, something like that. And she had an episode while she's up in Boston. And I don't care how old your kids get, doesn't make any difference. They're still your babies, and you still worry. And so I'd appreciate your prayers, but when you were talking about that baby and that whole, I thought, God, you sent JR to me this morning so I could hear that and know that regardless, she's saved, she knows the Lord, so I don't have to worry about that, praise God. But, we serve a mighty God who can answer our prayers and comfort our hearts in times that we can't be with the people we love. But I'm just a sinner saved by grace. Luke 18:13 says, and the publican standing afar off would not lift so much as his eyes into heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful unto me, a sinner. And that's what I am. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. And that's what God gave me this song. Lord, you know my heart. You know that I am filled with sin. I'd like to say that it's not my fault, but that's not a battle I could win. It may have begun in the garden underneath the tree with Eve. She may even tell you how the devil did deceive. I had a problem, but Jesus had a plan. I'll not play games, I'll tell you just where I stand. I stand on the rock of Christ my Lord. He saved my soul, and my sin he bore. He saved my soul, my sin he bore. Well, every pew inside the church and every soul outside its door is filled with one excuse or another on why they failed the Lord. And it may have begun in the garden underneath the tree with Eve. She may even tell you how the devil did deceive. You and I both know how very weak we are, so I'll not play games. Thanks for saving me from that fire. I stand on the rock of Christ my Lord. He saved my soul, and my sin he bore. He saved my soul, and my sin he bore. It may have been Satan who started the fall, but it ended at the cross when Jesus died to save us all. I stand on the rock of Christ my Lord. He saved my soul, and my sin he bore. He saved my soul, and my sin he bore. Thank you.
It seems anything but clear, but sometimes just trusting Him, it is the only hope I see. But that's again when my Jesus says, just lift up your head. That's all you ever need, 'cause you're still you. But I'm still me. You're still scared, but I don't fear anything. You're still weak, but I'm still strong. You're still struggling, but I'm still on my throne. You're still you, but I'm still me. You're still scared, but I don't fear anything. You're still weak, oh, but I'm still strong. You're still struggling, but I'm still on my throne. You're still struggling, but I'm still on my throne.
A blessing that invited him to speak. One of the highlights not only of this year or last year, but of our life in all. And it's just wonderful to be able to come here. And my wife and I, we left Scotland on Tuesday. It was one of the most harrowing experiences we've ever had traveling. I've had the opportunity to work extensively around the world. But on Monday we were told that British Airways had no crew. They were down with food poisoning. So the last thing I needed was a pilot with diarrhea. Once we got to London, we had problems landing. We had crosswinds. And we left in a jumbo jet, which I believed would have given us a much whiter and much smoother travel. But we ended up with severe turbulence 2 miles into our journey. When I say severe turbulence, without exaggeration, I was at sea for many years and worked in many oil rigs. It was a time I felt Janet had loved me a wee bit more because she was closer to me. And she was holding me like she never held me before. There were bottles falling out of the seats. It was horrendous. And my mind looked back at when Jesus sat in the back of the boat in Galilee. And I tried to visualize him sitting in the back of this jumbo jet. But eventually, got quiet waters. Sometimes it's like that in life, my friends, that we have to go through turbulence before we get the quiet waters. And when we got back onto land, Janet and I, we were back to normal. Janet, will you stand up for those who haven't seen you? And there's a reason, Pastor, why I didn't bring my harmonica. I felt the Lord telling me that this message is about him, not about me. And for that reason, I have a backing tape now with waves and birds on it, which is really good. But I felt that the message I have today is short. And I believe for many of the students, and maybe some of the people here, never heard of what happened in Scotland. Although I live in Aberdeen, I was brought up in the Hebrides, not the Outer Hebrides, on an island called Skye. I want to testify just a little of my younger days, but I want to tell how uniquely that God brought me here. I've been in here when the water was up here. I remember one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, there was myself, Mrs. Schuyler, Linda Denny, Mrs. O. We were emptying chicken fridges over in the youth building. And we spent days on the cleanup here, only for it to happen again the second time. That was phenomenal. And to see the fire engines coming here. We don't have that in Britain. We have to pay for everything. We get free Medicare. But if you're listening to your news, that is stretched now to the limit, where we have something like nearly 100,000 outstanding operations. But I was born in 1949 as a young boy. Very often you're young when you're born. Way back in these times, it was very a religious time. But I was out of wedlock. My mother and father didn't know each other very well before I was conceived. But for some reason, they didn't want me. But a dear grandmother decided to take this orphan boy, who nobody wanted, to look after him. She had little English, but she held a Bible on her knee. She took me to church for 14 years. But I found a seed that traveled with me through 30 years as a drunkard. When I left home at 14 and I crossed that stretch of water, I had long ginger hair, freckles. I was very good looking. Most of you boys didn't have that problem. But after a few short years, I fell in love. Not with a woman, but with a liquid that made me happy, made me joyful, made me something that I never had as a little boy, because I suffered rejection for many years. I didn't know why I was the way I was. I didn't know why my dinners were being paid for free. Then, of course, there was the bullying in school. They used a 7-lettered word, which I didn't understand. By the age of 19, I was a hopeless alcoholic, a fisherman, who lost that outer beauty and lost much of the desires that I really wanted. I wanted so much in life. But I was caught up in the alcohol, and the visitation of God was no longer in my heart. I remember going to bar for the first time on a Sunday, and I would turn my back on the television, because it's the way I was brought up. There were still some ethics I still had. Leaving Aberdeen, I went to Aberdeen, the oil capital of Europe, where the Americans came and showed us how to get the oil out. and they also stole all our good-looking women. But the Americans were a blessing to us. They were hard drivers. Most of them were from Louisiana, and they were tough. Some Texans were tough, but the money was good. But you know, as the alcoholic lifestyle, things became tougher. I ended up getting medical issues. And by the age of 22, I'd been in medical hospitals with alcohol. After a period of time, I was to go to Saudi Arabia to work, but I had a road accident where I was almost 2 years in hospital with a hit-and-run accident. But the 5 people who went there ended up with a wreck. They were all killed. I was in hospital on traction. But here I was when I got released with a huge ball of money and bought a business. But within 8 months, the business collapsed. I was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, 2 years to live, and in American dollars, $130,000 in debt. You know, at a time in life, you have to make a choice. But when you haven't got that strength, when you haven't got that mentality, or these real people, going to church was fine, but it was just a form of godliness. A form of godliness that I see common today throughout the world and throughout my own country. But one night, 7:15, as I sat in a bar, the power of God, yes, there was no flashing lights, there was nothing angelic, but I came under so convicted of what I was doing. I left that bar, I went to church. It was a charismatic church. I didn't know the difference. But for 1 minute I was drinking scotch. The next 10 minutes I was at the altar, calling on a God that I didn't know. I went back to where I was. But you know something, my friends? By 10 o'clock at night, the alcohol never tasted, and it didn't have the same effect. I went home that night, like the Samaritan woman who left to go and get water. By the end of the day, she was a missionary. I certainly wasn't. But I had a choice in my life, my friends. I didn't need a straight jacket. I needed a working jacket. And I got that working jacket, and I put it on. And I went back to the oil rigs to pay back a lot of debt. My personal life changed. I fell in love with this woman who we married. And after a short illness, she went for an operation. She was no more. There was a huge void in my life that no man could fill. The opportunity arose that I would go to Odessa to work with street children in the sewers. It was a place of ugliness. But you know, when God or man or whatever happens to you inside, when there's a void in your life, you have to fill it with something. And for me, this was my opportunity to do something for God. And after a while, a short period, the opportunity came to go and work in Arizona. Arizona was wonderful, but they didn't have the same rain as they had in Scotland. And the heat was much more. So I got transferred to the Virgin Islands, where the heat was much worse. Excuse me. It was decided that working in America wasn't for me. It was too hot, the climate, so I went back to what I did normally in the North Sea oil rigs. But I got a telephone call before I went that a young man was coming to work outside Beverly in Ohio. But because he had a DR on his license, on his passport, he wasn't allowed into Columbus. And I was sent as a last resort. Isn't God wonderful the way He works? His format. And you know, if God wrote books, He'd be his bestseller all the time. Of course, this one is. But when I came here, I didn't like the place. I didn't like the hotel. I didn't like the work. And there were many times I wanted to go back home. But through reasons I'm not going into, I was invited to come to this church. I was a man who spoke in tongues, believed in everything that I was taught through my wife and the churches. But by the time I reached here, it was a prayer conference morning. And I heard a pastor stand up, Pastor Geiler. He says, I've been preaching for this book for X amount of years, and I've never changed anything that time. I said to myself, I want to hear this man. He mentioned Ian Paisley was a friend of his. And I know the work of Ian Paisley. There was issues politically, but there was many issues that he was a very godly man. But I worked night shift. I was supervisor night shift. But I came during the day, listened here, and went to night shift. But sitting in the corner there was a young girl from the Philippines. She was taking pictures of this guy it was her boyfriend, a dentist. And he was talking to me. And for some reason, I thought she was taking the pictures of me. I was better looking than him. The dentist probably had more money than me. But to cut it really short, got to know each other. We had nothing in common. It was like crossing a Rottweiler with a poodle. She was a lawyer, and I was a rough Scotsman. And we got married very, very quickly. I know it's close to Valentine's Day, but none of you students are going to come up to this romantic story. Janet went to class in the morning, and at 2 o'clock she got married, and at night she went back to college. I stayed in the Lafayette Hotel. Then we traveled back to Scotland. I was here as a student for 3.5 years. I wasn't a model student. I came from management to cleaning toilets, ladies' toilets, for Mrs. Fair. If I wasn't married, I would never have stayed. But I had ethics that I had to keep up to. And that was one of my main reasons. I struggled. But you know, my friends, we went back home. We've been married 14 years now. And it's a long time. My first marriage was much shorter, but it was separated by death. And I always said I would never, ever take an operation. I lost my wife on surgery. 2 years ago, just like some of you guys and women, you may have been called into a surgery, but the doctor has given you bad news. I was there. And they told me that I had to have part of my prostate removed. But I said I will never go through an operation, so they decided they would give me a needle in my back to freeze half my body. And I agreed to this. But at the end of the surgery, I knew they were panicking. Something was wrong. They came to me and says, Mr. Mackinnon, you have internal bleeding. We need to put you through anesthetic. I said no. And they used 3 words that changed my mind. You will die. For the first time in my life, I did not have an abrupt answer. And when you're lying on a slab, and there's nothing between you and God, and as I was arguing the point, I was losing blood. As I told the students yesterday who picked me up, I don't believe in plan B. My life is always plan A. And I wasn't willing to be a second-class citizen. They put me on this slab, and this nurse held my hand. But you know, my friends, it's a wee bit like the electric chair. You don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what's on this other side now. But I was terrified. You know, for many years I said, oh, I'm so glad to be saved. I'm ready to go to heaven. No way. I wanted to hang on. And this nurse, for some reason, I asked her name. She said Esther, who was the name of my wife. This was confirmation that I was going home. But you know, my friends, guess what? I'm here today. My plans are not your plans, says the Lord. And you know, my friends, we went back to Scotland, and God has opened doors that no man will shut. And I have a message today, and I believe it's for the students. And I asked one girl to do homework last night. I asked her to find out in Google where the place called Barvis is. Now, I can't remember her face, but I don't know if she did it. But before I bring that short message, my friend, I would like to give a short, not testimony, but a tribute to the late John Lehner. I had a lot of contact here with Mr. Lehner. He was Irish, Scottish, and Pastor Geiler had similar blood in him. He was my administrator, and we spent a lot of time together. My friends, be careful what you say when you make a promise. I promised him that I would take him to Scotland and to Buckingham Palace, and I let it go. Mr. Lehner didn't. Every month, every second month, when are we going to Scotland? But it was the time of the Olympics, and I phoned Pastor. I says, Mr. Geiler says, I don't think this is the right time to take Mr. Lehner. I didn't get the answers I wanted. I brought him to Scotland. And you know, my friends, it's very hard bringing somebody that's flying to your country, to take them on a train, take them on buses. But you know, my friends, I met a man that I admired. The way he utilized his life, the servant of God to a high standard, the respect for his master in heaven and for his master, Mr. Geiler. Never, ever, ever did I ever hear one word that was not ethical towards Pastor Geiler. Never, ever once did it go close. My friends, I saw something that I didn't have. I saw something that was different. In fact, that was with Pastor Geiler and Mr. And even in my most stressful time with them in London, I still called him Mr. Lehner. And when I took him to the plane in Aberdeen, Scotland, to hand him over to a steward, I thank God for giving me the opportunity to bring a man with impaired eyesight to my country. My friends, you'll never ever understand how God blessed me and my wife. But today, my friends, I don't call him Mr. Lehner. I call him Gentleman John. My friends, I'm so glad that Mr. Lehner passed my way. As you are aware that I work in Aberdeen with people with alcohol problems. And in the North Sea, there's between 35 and 50,000 people who do not know God, who drink severely for 2 to 3 weeks. They live on a borderline of poverty and riches. They are rich one day and they are poor the next. But you know, when these men came on shore, they would never go to a meeting that brought the gospel and brought help for addiction. So I set up several years ago the North Sea Garden Mission, Awareness of Alcohol. It's got a huge, huge website, which is global. But we're in Israel just a few months ago, got calls from Australia and further afield. This program, those who follow it consistently, you will never ever go back to alcohol. You will never go back to drugs. There's a part of our brain that's called theo. And once this has been severed, you can never ever be a social drinker or a social drug addict. Your life will never be you. I put across now that alcohol is not an illness. We have the opportunity to work with STV, Radio 5, the media, putting across that this is the third greatest killer in the world, in my country and globally. And it's rising so much with women. Young women are escalating into addiction. And this here is my truck. It took me about 2 years to make it. And I can give it to anybody. They take it because they don't see it as a gospel truck. But as they read it and read it, at the end, there I am preaching in Marietta College. And I have a slogan at the back that I put together, and I would like you to maybe write it down, because this is what it says. If you do what you've always done, you will be what you've always been. If you do what you've always done, you will be what you've always been. A pastor once told me, Alister, you've been on the road a long time, but you haven't traveled far. Unless we accept chastisement from a preacher or from an elder, but we're not willing to do that nowadays. We just go to another church. No growth. A form of godliness. A form of godliness. We were at the hotel the other night, my friends, and yesterday morning, one of the cleaners came to me and says, I like the book you're reading. So he started talking to me. He says, I've just done 12-hour shifts and I'm doing 8 at the hotel. I says, why are you doing that? I'm building a church. I want to start to build a church. Oh, that's wonderful. He says, is your family with you? Oh, yes. I have a son and a daughter and a girlfriend. We stay in a little house. He never knew that not being married was a requirement. My niece phoned me before we left. She's been going to church for 20 years in a denominational church. She says, Alister, we haven't gone to church since November. She says, can you tell us where we can start to worship, because I'm bored in the church we're in. And as I started to testify with her, she never knew about the power of the devil, and she never knew about the power of the Holy Spirit. Her minister, when she got married, came to me and says, Stephanie's a wonderful Christian. And I was offended, because she had been living with her boyfriend for 2 years and got pregnant. She was getting married. But he said she was a lovely Christian. And this, my friends, is the fundamental blunder today, that this is not being preached from the gospel. Oh boy, I heard a man today saying his brother may be in hell. We need to hear that more and more, my friends. We need to bring hell into the equation. This is not a youth club. This is life or death. Eternally, we have 2 choices. And right across my country today, we have a form of godliness that the devil will teach you and tell you that you're saved. You'll go to church, you'll go to prayer meeting, do tithing, but you haven't come to the level that you're knocking on heaven. And as I tell you part of this story, what happened in 1949, because I've written it, and I hope you all grasp it. "20 years ago, in another part of America, I was in a hotel, and this elderly woman from Nigeria came to me. She says, Scotty, she says, I had a dream of you last night writing a bestseller. I said, darling, if you've dreamt of me, you never took your medicine last night. I left school at 14 with no education. And it was one of the craziest statements ever. But as I said, I went to Chernobyl in abroad, part of Russia, to work with street children. And year after year, month after month, a story started to work in my head. I started to write it down and put it on audios. But with little education, I never knew where this could go. But after a long time, I felt that I'd already got something. But what do I do with it? But for some reason, a door opened for me with Westbrook Publishing, one of the biggest publishers in America, part of Nelson and Vandermeer. We called them and says, please send your manuscript, sir. But in doing this, it's quite an expensive package. So I had to send finances. But while Janet and I were on the island of Patmos, where John was, I'm sure all of you know that, I got a memo saying, we like your book, and we want to publish it. So I had to do some editing. I was doing 18 hours a day at times, putting this book together. And then I had to put the cover together. And you know, my friends, in November the 27th, the North Sea, Monster Mania, the love story of dreams, was birthed. On the last 4 chapters, it indicates I was only a drunken fisherman. The picture of 2 children. 2 children who lived together with their drunken parents. And after a time, they found out that they were going to be taken into care. So because of what alcohol had done to them, they knew that godly grandmother. See, that right through the book, there's part of me. But Granny was gone. She had gone to glory. All they had was their parents. But one night they watched a documentary of a man from Scotland, who was the man that's standing before you now. And they saw a picture of the orphanage of dreams in Odessa. They went to bed. They got bullied in school because they were the children of drunkards. But then the big black car came one day to tell the parents that your children will be taken into care in 7 days. They had about $12 between them. But they decided the next Thursday they would pack up their little bag and head to Odessa to find the orphanage of dreams. You know as well as I know, you can't go to a foreign country with no passport with $10. But they left in that little bus, they left that little Hebridean island, they crossed by ferry, leaving their parents behind them, knowing fine that it's sad to leave your mommy and daddy, but when alcohol can take you to a place that devastates your heart, you will go to any extremes, many to suicide. But they only had enough money to go to Loch Ness. But the story escalates from there. Anybody or church that wishes to get this book can get them 50% off. I get nothing from it. I have a few with me. But my friends, as I tell people, it is a bestseller. It's actually on Amazon. It's also on a Japanese website, Chinese, and it's going global. With little education, easy reading. I urge you that this book will change your life and change my bank account. Wonderful, my friends. When a drunkard waiting at 6 in the morning for a bar to open with no education. What an awesome God we have, my friend. But you know, God had to take me here. When I was in the Caribbean and in Arizona, I was that close to going back to alcohol. I came here and I saw the face of Jesus through the people that. I said I wasn't a model student. No, I wasn't. But it's not how you start your life, it's how you finish it. And that's why I can come back today. I hold my head up high. Because I put both hands up for all my mistakes. I'm probably the only student that ever came here that campused himself for 3 weeks and 2 weeks. Mr. Leonard didn't give me an easy time. I used to do doing the corridors with these runners. I loved that job because I couldn't hear anybody. My friends and students, I can't come back here anymore to do another 4 years. This is the only chance you've got. Make good use of it. Please make good use of it. This is one of the greatest miracles that has ever happened in your life. God bringing you from a foreign country, bringing you here with free education, free food, and free beds. There is no other place that you'll get that apart from eternity. There's no outer beauty here. No swimming pool, no basketball courts. But I tell you, there is something here. That Scotsman who worked down there, wanted to go home, got married here, got education here, and to throw a wife in with it. That's a good deal. Within 3 weeks, we got married. Fast foods. But you know, we've been married for, nobody knew we got married, except Linda Denny. I don't know which one should be the lawyer, my wife or Linda. But my friends, I want now to take an opportunity to share a short message. And students, I urge you to see what God can do. Revival is not a revival in a church up the road. It's a revival meeting. But when revival comes and saturates your land, it's God. There's not a mixture of denominational, charismatic, or whatever. When I left my home and I left to that wee island, went to the mainland, I came from a Protestant island. And by 18, I was a hopeless alcoholic. But one person fell in love with me, and it was a woman. And it was a nun. I was terrified because I was taught that we had nothing to do with Catholics. But this woman who had no outer beauty, it was the time of the swinging 60s. And she was probably the only woman in the whole village that didn't have a miniskirt on. A nun. But she showed me that outer beauty. Have you got food, my dear? Have you got a place to sleep? We can knock the Catholics. No, there's one woman I believe is sorry. As I go to my message, there was a woman in the island of Lewis. Her name was Mary MacLeod. She had a little cottage on the banks of Barbas and Shawpost. She left the shores of Scotland. She went to New York. She had a son that grew up, became an alcoholic. But she had another son. He grew up. He never drank at all. His name was Donald John. But tell me his third name. To take out John was Donald Trump. Donald Trump's mother came from the place I came from. His mother was a Gaelic-speaking woman. He carries her Bible yet. He doesn't drink, so he's got my vote. Yes, my friends, that's true. His mother came from a little place that had an outside toilet. Nothing like the White House. But my friends, it's amazing what God can do. He took that woman from the other side, but God took me to this side. I'm not in the White House, but this is still plan A. Those of you who have you got your Bibles this morning, I would like you to go to Isaiah 44. The message is short, but this is not fake news. This really, really happened. Because Pastor Geiler knows what I'm talking about. My wife does. And I know many others here know what happened in the village of Barbas in 1949. We'll start at verse 3. I will pour water upon that is thirsty, and floods upon dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon thy seed, and my blessing upon offspring. And they shall spring up as among the grass, and as willows by the water's course. One shall say, I am the Lord's, and the other shall call himself by the name of Jacob, and another shall subscribe him with his hand upon the Lord, and surname himself by the name of Israel. Janet, will you please pray for your husband? I just forgot something before I go into my message, my friends. My wife went to the Philippines and she forgot she had a husband. And let me finish. And now, don't go there. 3 days passed, I got no phone call. I panic. I'm a nervous person. That's very hard to believe, but I am. So I went through her particulars and I found one phone number. And I got through to a beautiful woman, elderly woman who's a missionary. But these words for me, I sat at a prayer meeting with Janet this morning. And I said to her, is there anything I can do for you? She says, yes, I have prayer ministry, prison ministry in Manila. And I said, what can I send you? I was hoping maybe 2 or 3 Bibles. But she wanted 500 Bibles, a computer, and overheads. But you know, to get your wife, it was a small deal. And this is a picture, I'm going to leave them. That's the Bible, part of the Bibles arriving in the Philippines, the prison. This is a prisoner, his cell door, receiving a Bible. Oh, this is blowing me away a bit. This is one of about 60 prisoners getting baptized in prison. Janet went to the meeting that Sunday night where 600 prisoners were in the jail ministry. 600. My friends, God is moving in the prisons. And you know, I got Janet back, and wonderful that God opened that door for us, and we're still affiliated with this woman, a godly woman, so godly, but she had no money to give them Bibles. And what a privilege it was for the people of Scotland to do that. Just a quick story, when that big hurricane was in Scotland, we raised up just under £1,000 because this area that was knocked flat, somebody donated 6 big power saws, but they had no money to put the fuel in. So that money covered that. My friends, even if you have a little bit of money, it can do a lot in a place which has got little. In 1949, off the coast of Scotland, lies a small group of islands called the Hebrides. The Hebrides are broken up into small islands. But a time, my friends, came that God stepped down from heaven and saturated these islands with the power of God. But there was a requirement. God doesn't turn up just like that. There was a necessity. But there was a revival, was a testimony of the prayer and an absolute necessity of 2 words: holiness and obedience. The Word of God is wonderful, and prayer, but we also need holiness and what I've just said here, obedience. When we look at Isaiah 59, we see the 3 segments. The first part of the separation from God. As we go through the second part, sin confessed. As we come to the end of that chapter, we see the Redeemer of Zion, redemption. It doesn't come the other way, but this is the way it comes. Instrumental in this revival was an evangelist called Duncan Campbell. Duncan Campbell was a Scotsman who was in the army. He played the bagpipes and he did sword dancing. But one night in a barn, before the revival, the power of God hit him. He never played the bagpipes anymore. but he was instrumental. He came for 2 weeks to the Hebrides of Scotland just to have a meeting, but he stayed for almost years. Why would God come to the Hebrides, the Isle of Lewis? It was barren. There was no outer beauty. There was no beautiful trees. There was no scenery. There was nothing there that would be an attraction to man. But to God, that was a different. So different. But there was a reason. In the Isle of Lewis, there was 2 women. One was blind, called Peggy. One had arthritis, called Christine Smith. They prayed continually. But one night, Peggy had a vision. She had a vision that God was going to send a revival to the shores of her forefathers. They never went to church because of their circumstances. They called the elders and they told them in a very strong voice, we want you to gather in the barn and pray and pray. And once you pray, I want you to call on Duncan Campbell, who's in Ireland. See, we didn't have texting then. There was no email. There was no Twitter. And it was by a telephone. But they weren't willing to listen to this woman. Like many of us, we don't see the bigger picture. But in the barn that night, they started to pray. And a young boy stood up and he started to read Psalm 24. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? Who shall stand in his holy place? Those with clean hands and a pure heart. He sat down and they started to pray. And within a few minutes he stood up and went to the front of it. He says, this is humbug. Are our hands clean? Is our hearts pure? And a large part of that meeting that night, they brought themselves before a holy God. Before a holy God. Then he read the psalm again. And within a few minutes, a power was loosed in Barnabas that shook the whole of Lewis. The Holy Spirit began to move on people. They never knew what it was. It was like a rushing wind. The next morning, as they do in denominational churches, they have to write a report on the previous day. And this is what was said. The minister writing about what had happened the previous night. You met God on the meadow. You met God in the moorland. You met him in the houses of the people. He seemed to be everywhere. You see, this was little to do with evangelists. This was nothing to do with special effects. This was nothing to do with organized, and it's nothing to do with human endeavor. Nothing to do. 2 women who challenged God. God, we have done what you wanted. Now please answer us. I am not in that position at this time, my friend, to tell God that. Because the purity of my hands and my heart are not in the place where I believe God would answer that. But I know I'm in a better place than I was a few years ago. And as we draw nearer to that requirement of revival, I believe God is waiting just to send it down to us. In America, happened in Ireland, Wales. In Wales, there was a time when the Unionists would not speak to other people. When they went down the mines, when God came into their lives, they had prayer meetings. During this period, like many places, there was a dance going on. Oh, dances in Scotland then was a room half the size of this, you would call it a nightclub now. But you know, you could do what you like up to a point. If you ended up having a fight, it carried on until one of you was beat. Anything went. But that night at another meeting at church, a young man stood up to pray in the pew. There was 200 to 300 people. But in this dance hall, where the Scottish music and bagpipes were being played, the curtain started to move from side to side. The door started to swing, and a power came in. They ran from the dance hall as if a plague had came to them, and headed when Dr. Campbell entered up into the pulpit, he found it blocked by young people. Totally blocked, because already there were 300 there. And then when he got into the pulpit, there was a young girl there, a graduate of Aberdeen University, who had been to the dance, and was lying on the floor shouting and crying, "Is there mercy for me? Is there mercy for me? Is there mercy for me?" 30 minutes earlier, she was in the midst of the world, drinking alcohol, doing what the world does. But she was gripped in something she didn't understand. We're talking now of close to 500 in a church that normally had 30 or 40. Another night, Dr. Campbell was preaching, and he was summoned halfway through his sermon by a young man. He paused, and he was told there was between 600 and 700 people outside the church. They never knew that there was a meeting on. They never knew anything that had happened, but something in their hearts drew them to God. And they were circling the church till 4 o'clock in the morning. My friends, this is what happens. God's saturated. What happened here can happen here. As I'm coming close to the end, another night, Dr. Campbell was called to the station where 400 people were gathered, because they knew that the constable. And he heard a mother screaming to her son, "Willie, Willie, are you coming at last?" A young man came from Australia. He was there for 4 years. He came home, and before they went to the bar, would come and say hello to mother first. But he met a young boy called Duncan MacPhail. He just got a welcome from him. But as he walked from his gate to his mother's home, the power of God touched him. And when he arrived home, before the night was over, he led his parents to the Lord. You see, my friends, there was a religion in the Hebrides. You see. They would read the Bible in the morning, they would read it at night. They would bless the food before they started or when they finished. But they weren't saved. But when the revival came, they knew the Word of God. When you hear that presenting in Scotland after the man who leads, it was because they were uneducated and couldn't read. My friends, this is a fact that cannot be disputed. There was an awareness of God that churches were crowded for weeks after weeks. Revival does not, in revival, time does not exist. It was during this time that the drinking bar shut, the picture houses closed, marriages were meant, and there was no crime. But before Duncan Campbell came to the Hebrides, he had a big church outside Edinburgh. Everything was going great. But one morning at 5 o'clock, he had a knock on his study. It was his 14-year-old daughter. He said, "Daddy, can I speak to you?" He says, "Darling, of course you can." So she sat down beside her daddy, and she looked Daddy in the eyes. And she says, "Daddy, for the last 17 years, the church has been wonderful. But Daddy, we're not seeing anybody getting sick." For 17 years, Duncan Campbell had gone cold. He lay prostrate on his study. Several hours later, daughter went in to see him. And you say, and I'll never forget these words, he says, "Daddy, whatever it takes, go through with God. Whatever it takes." And in a few days, he went to his sermon, and he stood in a pulpit like this, and he told his congregation that he hadn't been totally right with God for 70 years. And instead of the elders coming and taking him into vestry to pray with them, they left the church. And a third of the congregation left the church. You see, my friends, if the leader is not right with God, the rest won't be either. Duncan Campbell got his life right with God. He went with the Faith Mission in Edinburgh. And what I've told you today are just part of the story, what happened on the island of Lewis. I want to close with a short story that I believe will touch your hearts. A young boy in America got $30 for his birthday. So he always wanted a dog. So he went to the pet shop, and there was this beautiful dog there. And he asked the owner, he says, "How much is that dog, sir?" He says, $180. He says, "I've only got $30. But during this time, the door pushed open, and the mother of the dogs came in with 4 beautiful puppies behind her, and lagging behind was a dog pulling its legs. It just had no outer beauty. And he said to the owner, "How much is that dog, sir?" The owner says, "Don't be silly. That dog's no good to you. He won't be able to play ball with you. He won't be able to go up the mountains with you. He won't be able to do anything with you. So he's no good for you." The boy says, "How much will you take for it?" He says, "I'll let you have it for $60. You give me $30 now and pay $10 every month." "But why? Why do you want this dog?" So the little boy rolled up his trousers, and he showed the stilts and the polio he had in his leg. He says, "Sir, I can identify with that dog. We will just get on fine together. We may not go up the mountains. We may not play ball. But we're compatible with each other." It's the way I am, my friends, when I see an alcoholic. I was there. And my friends, born-again believers today, when you look out to a world that is dying, I was there. Just like that little dog. We need to come alongside. That little boy went home so happy. This little dog would never have got a friend. But we have a friend in Jesus. I was a drunkard, an orphan. But here I am today, the start of February, the opportunity to share what God did in my country. I fought the fight. Finished the course. Kept the faith. It's not how you start your life. My friends, today, if you're feeling down, and if maybe there's a lapse in your ministry, or some of you students are not making the grades that you feel, Just think of Duncan Campbell, how God used him further on. How the little dog would never have got a home if there was not an identification by a little boy. Barnabas, Isla Lewis. Duncan Campbell said, Lord, wilt thou rent the heavens and down? And the same God we had in 1949, the same God we have. The very month, I'm going to close with, the very month the revival came, December 1949, that was the very month I was born. Very month. Not only am I proud of my Hebridean blood, but I'm today so graceful where God has taken me from. The opportunity to come here to America, to be part of this college, which was part set aside by God that I would pass this way. People like Mr. Lehner, Pastor Geiler, Mr. Offenberger, Pastor Scott, McDowell, other pastors. And my brother said today in closing, maybe my brothers, we need to bring that reality of hell. Pastor preached a message here years ago on the brink of eternity, that side of eternity. It's not preached it lately, get the tape. To show you the reality of where we are not going. Oh Lord, I thank you, Father, for this opportunity. And I pray, God, if anything I've said has offended anyone, Lord, it's not fake news, Lord. It happened the way it is. Lord, I pray for every church that's represented, that they will come together in one accord, knowing the reality of the cross. Just like my sister, Lord, who's coming back in 2 weeks from a Muslim country after being there for 5 years. Oh, Lord, I'm so glad you blessed the family. But I'm so glad, Lord, today that I know the power of redemption. Amen.